Hi there. If you guys have been following my blog, you'll know that I'm riding in the Gear Up for CF ride. George Keulen and I are doing the 9-day ride, Vancouver to Banff, 1,200 kilometers. Yikes.
Yep.
How did you get involved in this?
The first time I heard about Gear Up for CF was when I was still waiting for my transplant back in early 2010. Some participants, some people who were taking part in the ride that year, I was in contact with them and they first told me about the ride, and they dedicated one of the days of the ride to me while I was waiting for my transplant.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so just explain to people a little bit about your transplant and a little bit about your history.
Yeah, so I was born with CF, or I was diagnosed at birth with cystic fibrosis. I was very lucky in that I was able to live a very healthy childhood and youth. It wasn't until my early 20s that I began to get really sick and feel the full effects of cystic fibrosis. In my early 20s, I began getting more and more chest infections, more and more pneumonia. And in the fall of 2006, I was battling a really bad bout of pneumonia. I ended up in the emergency room, in the ICU, and my lung function at that time plummeted to about 25%.
I can't even, 25%.
Yeah, it was very difficult to breathe.
Yeah.
At that point, my CF doctors referred me to BC Transplant, and my transplant doctors at that time could see that I was going to need a transplant. The effects of CF were not going to reverse themselves, and I was literally in the end stages of cystic fibrosis. So in November of 2008, I was waitlisted for a double lung transplant, and it took just over a year and a half to get my transplant. I was on the wait list for just over 18 months. Within that 18 months, I spent exactly 200 days and nights in St. Paul's Hospital, where the CF clinic is, and it was extremely difficult. During that time, I had my right lung collapsed twice. I had an allergic reaction to one of the drugs, which made me so out of breath one morning I couldn't even talk to explain to my doctors and to the physio what was going on. Exactly a week before my transplant, we didn't know it at the time obviously, we had a family meeting with my CF doctors, and they pretty much informed us that I had about 4 months to live, that without my transplant I would not make it for another 4 months. And exactly 7 days after that meeting, my nurses burst into my hospital room and woke me up and said that, you know, our hopes and dreams had come true, that they had a set of lungs for me. I got my call, and it was just absolutely surreal.
But surreal because you've gone from despair to joy. But were you scared?
Exactly. Well, the writing was on the wall that I was dying, that CF was soon going to kill me, because it's nature. It is a killer. At that point, we knew that that was my only shot at a second chance of life, and it was just amazing.
Wow. Having a lung transplant, though, doesn't mean you're cured of cystic fibrosis.
No, and that was made very clear to my wife and I on the first visit we had at BC Transplant. My transplant doctor said that when it comes to transplantation, you're really kind of trading one disease for another. So I no longer have cystic fibrosis in my lungs, because those are obviously the DNA of someone else, but I do have it in the rest of my body. But now that I've had a transplant, I am immunosuppressed, so I have to be very careful about any sort of infection, colds, flus, and also the big one is rejection. Keeping myself healthy, being extremely disciplined in taking my medications. But yeah, it is, the reason transplant is a final stage treatment is because there are a lot of risks and there are no promises at the end, but it does give someone like myself who was dying extreme hope for a second chance, and that's what I'm living right now.
So now you're doing the ride,
Yep.
and this is kind of a unique year in that there's 4 people with CF that'll be doing the ride, 3 of them doing the 9-day.
Yeah.
And Allie, who we talked to yesterday, it was interesting. Allie said that when she had her lungs, her body didn't know what lactic acid was. So that's the hardest thing for her,
Yeah.
is to train her body to understand that I can do that now.
Exactly, and I really have that too. Before transplant, your instinct is always to preserve. So as soon as I started feeling out of breath before my transplant, I would kind of shut down and stop and catch my breath and really try to preserve my energy. So now training my body to push through that, to realize that when I'm pushing up a hill and I start breathing really heavy, that I can continue to go, because my body can sustain that heavy breathing, sustain that muscle push. So training my body that I can continue to push through that is something that I consciously have to do, because instinctually I kind of want to shut her down as soon as I start breathing heavy, but now my body can handle it.
And you were saying that the 2-day was quite difficult. So do you have any concerns about the 9-day?
I'm a bit nervous. At least now I know what to expect moving forward. I know how big some of the hills are, how steep and how hard I'll have to work. So it'll all come down to training and also just knowing my limitations and just kind of taking my time, pushing up and over some of those hills. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Are you doing anything training-wise to get ready for this?
Just regular training right now. I'm trying to ride at least 200 kilometers a week.
Wow.
For the past
I better get on my horse.
For the past 3 Saturdays, I've made sure I've gotten for a 100-kilometer ride. So just really trying to slowly, ease up those kilometers, add on the training days per week is just all I kind of really feel I can do. Kind of making sure I'm getting the proper nutrition, making sure I get the rest that I need, are I know all important factors for myself, and also making sure I pack on the calories, because I still have cystic fibrosis when it comes to my digestive system.
Right.
So, and I'm also diabetic. So trying to walk that fine line of packing on the calories, taking care of my blood sugars. It's a fine line, but I'm willing to push through it and do what I got to do.
Now the other thing is that having other people with cystic fibrosis on the ride, you guys have to be careful. You can't be in the same vicinity. Can you explain that?
Right. Yeah, so because CF has a lot to do with infections, we don't want to, infection control is very important. So I've already talked with Mike and my other friend Paul, who's had a double lung transplant, and we'll probably get together on the first day of the ride just to make sure that, there's no cross-contamination. We'll share with each other if we're growing any CF bugs and stuff like that, and just to be totally open about the state of our health, I think will just be really important. And if precautions,
because you could have something that they might not have, and you could
exactly
pass them across.
Yeah.
Whereas we couldn't pass anything to you, but you could pass to each other.
Exactly. So just taking those proper precautions, it'll be up to us. It's a responsibility that we have to take as adults with CF. And I think we're willing to do that. And it's just about being aware of each other, of the different bugs we may or may not have, and just taking care of each other that way and just being aware. Yeah.
Are you excited or nervous or?
Right now I'm extremely excited about the ride. When I sent out my fundraising letter to all my family and friends, all of a sudden I got really nervous, because then it became that much more real, because now you
press send and you're like, oh my god, I'm entered.
Yeah, I know, and the kind of hundreds or $1,000 start coming in. It's like, well, I guess I'm doing it now.
Now I gotta do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think as time gets closer, I'll be getting more and more nervous. But I also know that you gotta live life, and my only goal is to just be able to bike every square inch of that ride, and whether it looks good or it looks messy, I don't really care. I know it's not going to look good.
It's not going to be pretty.
No, not at all. So, but I just want to do it, and in doing that, maybe I can serve as some sort of inspiration for people who have CF and who are walking that road towards transplant, people who feel themselves getting sicker and sicker. If I can be an encouragement in any way to them, as other people were to me, then the whole ride will be worth it.
Well, you guys are an inspiration to me. So I know you'll be like miles ahead of me,
I don't know about
but
that.
definitely an inspiration to me. So
Yeah, it'll be a good time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.